Hey, what's up, everybody? John Wade Boggs fan here. It's Sunday night, another episode of my hobby talk, and I have Nate Topps85401 on here, and I'll bring him on right now. Hey, Nate, what's up?
Hey, what's up, John? What's up, YouTube? What's up,
Yeah,
everybody?
yeah. Hey, before we get into just talking cards and bonds and bogs and you name it, we've talked on the phone a couple times. And I haven't mentioned this to you before, but I wanted to mention to it now, and I wanted to thank you. Uh, I've only been on YouTube. It's been Mike just got on here first. Good job, Mike. Um, so yeah, I want to thank you. And actually, since Mike's in here, I want to thank both of you. I've been on YouTube creating content since about the middle of March, and so I'm one of those newbies. And it was you and Mike. Mike saw my card catalog in the back and
Nice.
said, "Hey guys, you need to check out this video and this channel." And he has this great card catalog and stuff, and that got a lot of interest. And shortly after that, either you saw that video or you reached out or you were doing some contest or something, and you promoted my channel. And both of you, Mike and you, were a big part in sort of launching my YouTube channel to where I am now. So I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for that. So it may have just been happenstance, but yeah.
Well, it's funny when Mike and I were at the National in 2019, we actually had a short conversation about how we love it when people tell us that they got into either the community or collecting in general as a result of our content on YouTube. So that's awesome to hear, and appreciate you sharing that story. That's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, Hitman 23 is on here as well as Bowman 53. So welcome, guys. Um,
Welcome.
yeah. So there's really no topic here, just discussion. But I do have to ask. I think you did tell me though that obviously Topps 85401 is in reference to the Mark McGwire Topps rookie card, and you're a
Yeah.
big Bonds super collector. So did you start off being a McGwire fan and it just morphed into Bonds, or how did that work?
Yeah, so that's with me in the hobby. Yeah, that's a great question. So what happened with me in the hobby is I graduated high school in 1991. So like many of us in this hobby, I took a little bit of a hiatus. And I got started to dip my toe back into the hobby just a little bit. Like I'd frequent card shops and maybe like pick up 1979 Eddie Murray cards or
Mhm.
84, Don Mattingly Topps rookie card, picking up stuff from my childhood. And of course, in 1998, the summer of 1998 was the big home run chase. And
Yeah.
that summer, that home run chase is what really drew me back into the hobby. And Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, at the beginning of the year, Ken Griffey Jr. were all in that home run race. And I decided, you know what? I grew up an A's fan. I've always liked Mark McGwire. The guy had hit, McGwire had hit like 58 homers the year before.
Yeah.
And he was definitely on my radar. He's with St. Louis, a new team, kind of revitalized his career. And I said, I'm going to collect McGwire. And that was my first taste of player collecting. And I collected McGwire for a few years, and he kind of retired abruptly in 2001. And when he abruptly retired, I wasn't expecting it. A lot of people didn't see it coming. He still had a few years left on his contract. And then Barry Bonds was, the previous year in 2000, Bonds had hit 49 home runs with the Giants, and I was really starting to follow the Giants quite a bit. At this time, I was kind of transitioning from an A's fan to a Giants fan. And so my focus shifted from McGwire to Bonds in 2001. And of course, by midsummer 01, I was full on Bonds. I had kind of abandoned collecting McGwire and jumped full bore into Barry Bonds. So
Cool.
that's kind of the story of.
Yeah, because 'cause I didn't know that from the different times that we've talked and stuff on how you transitioned. It's always been Boggs, so there just haven't been any deviation from that, other than recently me getting into vintage. Sort of expanding my collecting universe beyond Boggs, because while that's interesting, I have other interests as well, and it goes to the whole, collect what you enjoy what you collect, and the whole thing that's been going on over the last couple months with just people's seemingly frustration level, and we don't need to get into all of that, but I've been maybe a little bit frustrated in what's available for Boggs or what I can afford for Boggs. I've added this other element or dimension to my collecting, and been able to really enjoy. I mean, I'm really enjoying looking for these right now, 78s and 79s.
And I love those
And
videos when you pick those cards up. They're
yeah, I mean, well,
fantastic.
that especially those 2 years, I started collecting in 78. So that set, the 78 set, has a special meaning to me, and just with memories and all that stuff, and to some extent 79, because that was the next year. I can still remember I'd get an allowance, 50 cents a week. And I could go to every Sunday. My dad would give me my 50 cents allowance, and after church, we'd go to this little corner newsstand store and stuff like that. And I can't quite remember, but it was either 25 cents a pack or 35 cents a pack for 78 tops. And you'd get like 15 or 18 cards. That's how old I am. But
it was 25 cents a pack in 78.
Okay.
For sure.
So then,
those are my first packs too. But I remember because like in 1983, it was 35 cents a pack.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And I remember like if I had $1.05, if game on, I'm getting 3 packs of cards, baby.
Yeah. So I picked out. I'd either get 2 packs of cards with my 50 cents, or a pack and some candy or something like that, or whatever. Yeah. And I can still remember going into the store and seeing the packs of cards and stuff. And so now, after all these years going back and starting to connect with the 78s and 79s, and I'm going backwards, I'm not going up through the 80s with some PSA cards, but it's a really, for me, a really cool starting point to start my vintage collection. So
yeah, and like I love what you have to say as far as like finding something else to collect if you're not able to find.
Oh, all right. Looks like we lost Nate here for a moment. I know he was having a couple technical difficulties. He has a link. Hopefully he'll be back on here, but yay, vintage. Yeah, yes, Mike, definitely. I know we're on the same ballpark there. Just waiting for Nate. Oh, here he comes. All right, there we go.
Yeah, you know what I think is funny is that my phone rang, and I'm thinking maybe that's why I got dropped off here. But anyways, to kind of pick up where I left off is the great thing about having like other things to collect besides your main player collector as a player collector is sometimes collecting a player, like just if all I concentrated was on Bonds, can get a little bit boring, can get a little bit frustrating, and if the market gets hot, there's nothing there for you to pick up or for you to afford to pick up. So it's very important, at least for a collector like me, because I'm going to be a long life collector, to diversify my collection.
Yeah.
And what that does is that allows me to still enjoy the hobby, even when I'm not able to acquire cards for my main focus, which is Barry Bonds.
Yep. Yeah.
And I've noticed and I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends. I've had it a lot lately, but economically, when you look at the hobby, there are, you have this pool of cards that are available. You have the collectors and or investors, whoever is going to be purchasing those cards, and then you have all their money that's going to go into the purchasing of those cards. And there's only so much money that can be introduced into the hobby as far as like what people are able to pay for cards. So when a certain genre of cards gets very popular or hot, or what is on the radar for new collectors or investors or whoever, there is a lot of opportunity to what I call quote unquote bond. You could pick up some fantastic stuff that just gets left behind because the collecting dollars just aren't focused in the what I call bottom feeding direction. So I've been able to acquire some pretty nice cards lately as a quote unquote bottom feeder. And something else that's very important for me is I don't ever want to feel like I need a card.
Right.
Like I have to have the card, or I don't have a choice in whether I purchase the card or not. So if a card becomes available and I don't think that it's worth the money, I'm perfectly fine with letting it go, because in my mind, I've had to train my brain, retrain the way I think, because I have been kind of caught up in the moment and caught up in like the feeling that I need something.
Yes.
But as a collector, I don't want to ever need anything. I want everything, but I don't need anything. Yeah. So I'm only going to acquire what I can within what I want, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. But I've long come to realization that I'm not going to get every single Boggs card out there. It's impossible. And for me to say I need this card, I need that card at any price or whatever, and I don't do that. So it's a like, and I'm like, well, how much, within my budget, because I think it's always good to stay within your budget no matter what you're doing, whether it's their hobby or you name it. But another thing is, you mentioned about like focus and what's out there and things like that. You have to have some sort of focus or with everything that's out there. And I find that as well. I mean, I'm focused right now on Boggs and vintage, but man, I see cards out there now. Now I'm not talking about the big, shiny, expensive rookies and stuff. You showed me, or you showed off in your video earlier today, I think it was, or last night, those two Bonds box toppers from Allen and Ginter.
Yeah,
I love the Allen and Ginter minis. The Allen and Ginter design to me has that vintage look to it. They're modern cards, but it has a vintage. I love some of the designs, and I'm thinking to myself, man, boy, it'd be nice to maybe build or buy, if it's depending on the price, some of these mini sets. But again, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm into Boggs, I'm into vintage. I only have so much money. If money wasn't an object, oh my gosh, there'd be so many things that I would, and it's not expensive stuff. It's not expensive stuff, just things that would be interested in. But it can only go so far. So you have to have some sort of focus. And I'm like, okay, maybe one day I'll go into Allen and Ginter minis or something. And then something else catches my eye. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool to collect. And it's like, I'm okay. No, wait a minute. Now, come on, get back to your focus here. But yeah,
it's a vast hobby. I mean, there's so many fun ways to collect and so many awesome products to collect. It's unbelievable. That's what I love about going to shows and card shops and rummaging through boxes and rummaging through collections. Is I enjoy baseball cards so much that I can find cards of players that I never even thought I'd want to own. Yeah. See something in a box, remember a player like, for example, Jose Oquendo, let's say, right? Yeah. Like, let's say I saw a really cool, insert card from I don't know if I don't think he even played much in the 90s, but let's just say some cool card of Jose Oquendo. I might want to pick it up because I remember watching him as a kid when he was with the Cardinals playing against the Giants, and he had pitched in relief in an extra inning game, and the broadcasters were talking about how he was the ultimate utility player because after his relief appearance as a pitcher, he had played every position for the Cardinals that season. Yeah. Okay, cool. I want to know Kendo. He's the ultimate, utility player from the 1980s or early 90s. So I mean, just cards like that, somehow find their way into my collection. Or if I'm watching a YouTube video and someone tells a great story about a player that they really enjoy or a player that they know a little bit something about, I might go out and maybe pick up a card or two of that player just for fun and, knowing that I've learned about that player. So it's a lot of fun, like just having other stuff to chase besides just a singular focus.
Yeah. Well,
I like everything, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've been to 2 nationals, both out in Chicago in 2015 and then last year in 2019. And I remember last year I had 2015, since it was my first national, I had a goal. I had certain cards that I was looking for, and I was able to pick up a couple of them. 2019 was more, hey, let me see if there's any bog stuff. And then it was like a wide open. I didn't have any specific cards I had in mind. And I remember I think it was the Sunday. I think it was like the last day there. And, I had bought some cards and still had a little bit of cash left. And I went to this table who I'd been a couple times. I had some vintage cards. Didn't really know what I was looking for. I just, hey, what's it? And I said, look, what do you have for, and I forget what it was, $80, $100 or whatever like that. I said, what do you have vintage graded that's, for around this price range? He goes, he says, I have this 58 Topps All-Star Stan Musial in a BVG 8.5.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, I'm like, I wasn't looking for it, but I'm like, dude, Stan Musial. I mean, and it's an 8.5 from 58. And I love the design of the 58 All-Star. And I'm like, sure. It was just one of those things. I always try to go, I love TTO6s. So I have a couple of them. That was another one last year. I picked up Mordecai 3-Finger Brown. And I wasn't looking for that specific T206, but I know I wanted to pick one up. And again, there's so many things, especially at the National. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, it's wild what you can find there. Yeah, what's great about the 58 Stan Musial? I remember I have that All-Star card too. And I picked that All-Star card up at my local card shop. And I remember when I was picking it up, the guy that owns the card shop, he had mentioned to me, he was like, that's Stan Musial's first card from Topps. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he didn't have a regular issue in 58. His first regular issue was at the 59 card number 150, I believe, from 1959. But the 58 All-Star was his first card from Topps because he was signed exclusively with Bowman before that.
I had forgot that 58 All-Star was his first Topps card.
Yeah, and that was a late series card. It was the last series before the high numbers, and that set was, I think it was triple printed. That's why that would be a fun set for like a beginning vintage collector to collect, because you got like Ernie Banks, Stan Musial, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle. I mean, you got all these great players, and they're playing day cards of them. They're beautiful cards, like you had said earlier, and they're very affordable because there's so many of them printed. So,
there was
collectors. So that would be a fun set to put together.
On one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, I forget, maybe it was a vintage group. Someone had just posted that they bought. They're working on the 58 set, and they just purchased the mantle, which was the big one. It's always seems to be the big one, the mantle in the set.
Yeah.
But he had started. And wait a minute, I think he said he started on the set when he was like 12 or 14 years old, because Heritage came out, whatever year Heritage came out, it modeled off the 59 or 58 set, sorry.
Yeah.
And so he loved that design. So he as like a 12-year-old started on 58. And I forget how far he said he is, but he wanted to get it complete by the age of 22 or 23. And it's like just under 2 years away from his goal of completing the 58 set. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool. That's a great story. That's another great collecting story, right? We all have our collecting stories. So
yeah,
that's cool that he was able to share that story too.
And it also goes to show that someone made the point, and this may have been on Mike and Ty's live stream when they were discussing the craziness of the hobby and stuff, or someone pointed out, and it was a reference point, for someone my age or even someone older versus, the vintage versus the new. They're like, hey, when, you were a kid, you collected, the Pete Roses, the Eddie Murrays, that, the current players that you saw on TV. And, you didn't necessarily think, oh, well, I'm going to collect a Mickey Mantle or so. And now, the younger ones, they want to collect the players that they see on TV. So it's just, I think it just keeps going, but over time. And even now you see like this one who is a 12-year-old, granted it was a few years ago, but someone that was new to the hobby saw a new product, a modern product that had modern players in a vintage design, and decided, say, hey, I like that vintage design. Let me go and actually start collecting that 58 set. And I'm sure he learned about the history of baseball, the players back then. So I don't think you can necessarily say, oh, the younger kids are only into modern and us older collectors are into vintage, because you could have a variety of interests.
Well, it's funny, when I was a kid, vintage was already vintage, right? Yeah. Like the 50s stuff was vintage.
Yep.
Because you and I are the same age. I think we were born the same year, actually.
I was born in 72, so
yeah. We were born the same year. So our timeline as far as like cards and what, how we see the hobby evolve and what we saw as kids compared to now is the same. The first year I cracked packs was 78. Then I took a hiatus till 83. But I remember I had opening packs in 78. As a matter of fact, my favorite card as a little fella, that's what my grandpa used to call me, a little fella, was the 1978 Willie McCovey record breaker card. I have it right here. I'm going to go grab it.
Okay.
But I remember, because I kept my baseball cards at my grandma's house, and they were kind of mixed in with my dad's childhood collection at this time period. And my dad's childhood collection consisted of 59 Topps and 60 Topps. But this card here was my favorite card as a little kid. And what I liked about it was the stars on the bottom and the top. Those stars just, like we like shine, right? Like people now like shine. Hey, I like stars before they're shine, And then it's got this like just Paul Bunyan like figure of Willie McCovey, just this giant among men.
Yeah.
He just, and then it says 77 record breaker, and on the top, most times 2 home runs in an inning lifetime. Wow, this guy hit 2 home runs in an inning, and he did it more than once?
Yeah.
Holy cow. This is, I don't know, man. I still love this card. But anyway, this was my favorite card that I had pulled as a kid back in 1978. Just an absolutely fantastic card with Willie McCovey.
When I was, now again, I started getting packs in 78, but I remember starting to get a little bit more serious in my collecting around the 80, not so much 84, maybe 85, 86, 87. And I know the big card back then was the Jose Canseco 86 Donruss. And Uh, and the local card shop, the card dealer that, and he's still in business. He's one of the oldest, I want to say surviving, I guess, card shops in the country. It's pushing like 40 years, and
Wow.
he used to set up at a flea market. And Sundays, my dad would take me to the flea market, and his stand would be there. And I remember looking at the '86 Donrus's, and at the same time, I don't know why, my dad's never been a big baseball fan or a sports fan. So it's not like, hey, my dad was telling me of him watching Mickey Mantle, and or hearing him, all that stuff. So I don't know why, but even back then, as a 14-year-old, I was drawn to vintage. I don't know why. It was, it still had everyone was talking about Jose Canseco, Will Clark, Barry Bonds, those 86 sets and the Topps traded and the Fleer traded and all that. Those were the hot cards. And the Canseco cards was like the Tatis of today of, oh, it was $10 and the next month it was $15 and then 25 and whatever. But even though I did pick one up, the Canseco, I still was looking at vintage stuff. And, I didn't buy a whole lot because back then it was still out of, sort of out of my price range, but I still had the interest of it. I don't know why though, but.
Well, I think in the 80s, like when we were kids collecting in the 80s, the vintage were the toughest cards to acquire because the pricing on it, even back in the 80s, I mean, vintage was a lot more expensive than modern back then. And I remember just thinking, oh, I used to love looking at vintage cards, but never really buying them because they were out of my price range, even back then. I mean, they just weren't in my price range. I mean, I was not from a wealthy family as a kid, so for me back in the 80s, $5 on one card, that was a lot. That was that was a lot of money. I mean, a lot. I mean, it was like a 2-week decision making process whether I was going to spend $5 on a card back then, because what I could get for $5, one card, or what was it, 10, well, no, they were probably like 40 cents a pack, so maybe 13, 14 packs of cards. And if I saved my money for 3 weeks, I could get a whole wax box and then start to, put a whole entire set together after you crack open the wax box. So that was, so vintage was kind of out of my, even the key rookie cards were out of my price range as a kid for the most part. So.
Well, Alex here, Bowman 53, has a good point. Anyone can get caught up in vintage, grew up in the 80s just like us. Most of the cards that he owns are players that he never saw play. Same here. I mean, I remember to extent some of the either on TV or radio, some early 80s games and stuff like that from my recollection. But yeah, I mean, for most of us our age, these vintage cards, and maybe it's trying to learn or be part of baseball history to have these cards of players that you never saw play before. Maybe you'll see highlights on TV or whatever of footage back then, or you watch the old reruns of the Home Run Derby with Mickey Mantle against Harmon Killebrew or something like that. But you never saw him play. Yet there's an attraction for some collectors like us or of a certain age of collecting players that they never saw. And maybe it's, for the 14-year-old, maybe it's Jose Canseco that they never saw Jose Canseco play, but they're interested in collecting them.
Well, here's the beauty about collecting baseball cards and players that you've never seen play is there's these stats on the back, right? And as a kid, I'm a numbers guy. So, so we got stats on the back, and you could look at the stats on the back and almost like recreate a player's career. Oh my God, this year he hit 354 with 20 homers and 84 RBIs. Boy, he was really good. And, like the Topps product, a lot of times they will, you could tell if it's a league leader if the font's different on the back of
Yeah.
the card, and then
Well, yeah.
just or if a card, like if you see a player come up multiple times as an all-star, you see the all-star card, you go, oh man, this guy must be good. He's an all-star. I remember Dan Quisenberry was one when I was a kid.
Yeah.
The only reason why I knew Dan Quisenberry was the greatest pitcher of all time was because he was in the all-star set in 83, 84, 85, 86. I mean, Dan Quisenberry was an all-star from Topps every year. Turns out he was like, a reliever for the Kansas City Royals and not even a Hall of Famer. But when I was a kid, I mean, he's a great player. I never saw him play, but
didn't he have that like really submarine style of pitching? Like he really dipped down or something like that?
Yeah. He was one of the first submarine pitchers. But anyways, I mean, that's like an example, or like, and then everybody knew who Mickey Mantle was, and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and players like that, Roberto Clemente, players like that. We all know who those great guys were, and you hear stories. And like my dad would talk about Willie Mays. He would go to games at Candlestick when he was young, and he would tell me all kinds of Willie Mays stories about how his hat would fall off when he was rounding second base, and all the basket catches and the great hits, and just my dad knowing that when he was watching Mays play, even though this is like in the 70s and late 60s when he was like, in the end of his career, still what a thrill it was to be able to have watched Willie Mays play at Candlestick Park. And then, of course, oh man, Willie Mays, he's the greatest of all time. And then as a kid, thumbing through my dad's 1959 cards, and you got this beautiful 1959 Willie Mays card with the knot hole photograph and a headshot of Mays, and he's just, wow, look at this card. This guy's the greatest of all time. And I don't know, just so vintage is going to be a draw, and collecting players you've never seen is going to be a draw, because that's what baseball is. Baseball isn't just the game. It's the story. It's the history, and it's the story, and it's the people that tell the story, right? It's kind of a combination of all that. And then that's where cards come in to kind of to close the loop. Right? The cards close the loop to the player, to the story, to the person that tells the story. And just so many stories that you could go on forever and never hear all the stories out there, all the wonderful stories about baseball and the players. And it just makes you want to collect these guys that you've never seen before. Baseball is a type of game where you can almost imagine a player's career, or how they looked or what they did on the field, by looking at the back of the baseball card, or looking at the front of the baseball card. And you can just recreate the whole experience in your brain by enjoying the card itself, and along with the stories and the people and everything that is what makes baseball so awesome.
Well, you bring up a really good point, which I think to a lot of collectors is missing or has gone by the wayside, is the back of the card. Everyone is now, again, the more modern cards, they don't focus so much on the stats and things like that, but Topps still does. You look at a Mike Trout base card from 2020, he'll have his career stats. But I don't know, one of my recent vintage pickups was the 79 Topps Rose. And I was looking at, I was looking over it, turning the corner to see how the centering was on the back. And I started looking at the numbers. Okay. Now, obviously he's the hit king. All right. So, but for some reason in the back of my mind, I thought it was, that's just because of, Rose played so long. Right. So, okay, you get a player that plays, 20, 22, 23 years or whatever, and rack up that many hits. But I started looking at his hit totals.
Oh, I remember looking at the back of Rose cards when I was a kid. 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200. Every year, 200 hits.
I know Boggs had, until I think Ichiro broke it, it was 7 straight 200 hit seasons. And I think Ichiro made it 8 or something like that, or who knows, maybe it was even 9. Now, Rose, though, didn't have that consecutive stretch, but it was like maybe 9 out of 10 years or 8 out of 10 years or something like that. And I'm looking at the numbers and his batting average too. I'm like, hey, I think Rose gets sort of pigeonholed with that number. One, Charlie Hustle, that he was a fierce competitor, and the 4,000, 200 and how many hits that he has in his career. And but I don't think people necessarily take the time to look year by year on a consistent basis how great of a player he was. And I think that gets, with all the talk of should he be in the Hall of Fame, which I think he should, but anyway, I think people lose fact of they don't look at some of the stats, individual stats, and really appreciate these players for what they did.
Yeah, think about it. Getting 4,200, and I forget. I feel horrible. I can't think on the top of my head how many hits Rose had. It was around 4,200. To get that many hits, you have to get 200 hits a year every year for 20 years. You don't just get 4,200 hits because you played 23 seasons. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good call, Four Leaf.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, as kids in the 80s, we're probably like the last generation of collectors, because up until the early 90s there were no real special cards that you could pull out of a pack unless it was a rookie card. But like just in general, every player had, let's say, 5 flagship cards a year or whatever. So of course we're going to look at the back of the card, because you can only there aren't that many cards to look at, so you're going to look at every aspect of it. I mean, I remember organizing my car. Oh, this guy hit 300. He must be good. That was kind of my barometer. Are you good? Did you hit 300? Yep. Are you good? Did you hit the 20 home runs or whatever the criteria was?
Back then, 20, 25 home runs was you're close to the league lead. Yeah. But
well, in the 80s, there were
All-Star game.
Yeah, there were some lean home run years in the 80s, man. Yeah. That's for sure. And until the late 80s, I think they started to pick up a little bit, but
you said about back in the 80s and stuff that there weren't the inserts and autographs and jersey that wasn't there. Now the most you could get was they had inserts, but they weren't numbered or especially rare. But I do remember, man, in 80, and I forget now, it was 88, the chase for Greg Jeffries.
Oh man!
I remember when I opened a pack of Leaf. Or Flair, and getting the Jeffries. Oh, it was a $6 card or something like that at the time, and you thought I'd hit the lottery. I spent $1 on this pack or 75 cents on this pack, and I got a $6 card. It was like different scale. But today, getting a superfractor or something like that out of a pack,
Yeah, no, I would have to say that Greg Jeffries has to be the first true prospect chase card. And what I mean by prospect chase card is he hadn't done anything. He'd never stepped field on. He'd never had an at-bat in the major leagues, and his cards were red hot. He's the first player ever to achieve that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why people talk about him a lot.
And it's a shame. People have pointed out that he had an 8 or 10 year major league career. I mean, he wasn't the superstar that everyone thought he was, but it wasn't like, hey, he never made it, or he was just 1 year and then he released and all that stuff. He had an 8 or 10 year career with the Mets. I know he was with the maybe Phillies and the Cardinals.
Yeah, he was with the Phillies. Yeah.
So granted, maybe he turned out to be.
He was just a journeyman, right? He was a journeyman. He wasn't anything special, but I mean, it's funny.
If you can hang out around in the major leagues for 8 to 10 years, granted, it's not Hall of Fame caliber, but you have some talent. So
he got a lot better career than Eric Anthony.
Yeah.
If you remember, looking for Eric Anthony cards out of packs of 1990 Topps, right? That future stars with that colorful border and that headshot of Eric Anthony. Man, I loved Eric Anthony. I didn't know anything about him, except that he was a hot rookie, and I loved collecting his baseball cards back in 1990. But anyways,
Yeah,
that's it for another story.
that future stars label on the card was almost like the what is it, the college jinx. If you're on Sports Illustrated, your season's done or something like that. It's like the sports. So it's like, great, I'm a future star. Yep, no, it's not going to pan out. But
so I thought I would show off my Wade Boggs collection if you'd like to see it. All right, so as everybody knows, I am a true baseball card junkie, and I have representation for many players in my collection. I do have several Boggs cards, but here's what I have in my 3000 Hit Club collection in the 3-row box. So, and these are all playing day Wade Boggs cards. I don't have any post-career, but this is a 1998 Topps Chrome Refractor. Great card there.
Yep.
And it's kind of a shame that by the time the inserts came around, Boggs was a Yankee, right?
Yeah.
No. There's no real true Boggs Boston cards.
Yeah.
There's a 96 Topps Chrome Refractor of the great Wade Boggs. This one is this is like an issue at 96 Topps Chrome. They're notoriously off-center, but I love that card. It's just a great card to have. And then here's a 1997 Bowman Chrome. Now, who's that in the background, John? Maybe you know. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, it's Mario. Shoot.
That can't be Mariano Rivera, is it?
No, it's
okay. That doesn't look like him. Well, anyway, I know you'll figure. Well, you're going to call me at like 2 a.m. and say, "Hey, Nate, I figured it out." All right, and then here we go. This one's beautiful. I got an artist proof from Score. Wade Boggs.
Yeah,
that's nice. A beauty right there.
That's a nice shine.
Yeah. So I got that one, and then I got one. This may be a post-career card. If not, I forget what year this. It's got to be a post-career, actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
From early
2003 or 4, maybe.
Yeah, the Topps pristine relic card of the great Wade Boggs. So that's the extent of my. Those are my best Wade Boggs cards, besides the rookie cards, of course. I've got all his rookie cards. At least the '83 rookie cards. Yeah. But there we go, guys. So, John, that was for you, man. I figured you would enjoy my little Wade Boggs collection there.
Yeah. One thing that I did, with him ending his career, his last year was 99. I'm watching these. I don't know if you watched the videos. Bill, the Hall of Fame collector.
Oh yes,
and
he's got some fantastic '90s cards.
Yeah, and almost every video I comment, I'm like, oh man, I wish Boggs was in that set. Oh man, I wish Boggs was. And he's showing off like the 87, 88, 89 or early 90s and stuff. And I'm sorry, late 90s, early 2000s. And he was at the end of his career and he wasn't featured in a lot of these inserts and stuff. But oh my gosh, I would have loved to. Now, granted, they would have been expensive or something, but I would have loved to have Boggs in some of those insert sets. They're just gorgeous.
Nice. So I could show off. I could show off some Bonds cards if.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes, because you are. So now you're up to what the 50, almost 5,300 now.
Yeah, I think 5,290, somewhere in there.
Okay.
With those two those two cards I picked up last night, made it 5,290. Here's a few relics.
Mariano Duncan. I think Jeff nailed it. I think it's Mariano Duncan in the background.
Good call, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. I knew it was something like that. Yeah.
Mariano somebody, right?
Yeah.
So Mariano Duncan he must have been the
shortstop.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Because so here we go. Here
no, he wouldn't have been. No, Jeter would have been.
Well, that was that would have been 96.
96. Well, maybe a second baseman, but
who knows? Yeah. Anyway, okay, so I'll just show off a few random cards. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Oh, here's one I picked up at a local card shop not too long ago. I was glad to add it. Dual relic.
Ooh, nice.
and it's numbered to 100. That's why I was glad to add it. It's just kind of rare.
Yeah.
Some of the Fleers, like there's a version of this card that has one relic piece. I probably don't even have it. Oh yeah, I do have it. That's funny. So that's the single relic, and then I got the dual relic there. But I love that chevron in the background, right? Because in the left field at AT&T Park, there used to be the chevron cars. They've changed them over the years. They still have them out there, but the original ones, I remember I used to worry about one of those cars like robbing Bonds of a home run because the cutout would exceed the height of the rest of the fence. And so if you got real unlucky and hit a home run to the wrong spot, it wouldn't be a home run because the chevron cars would prevent the ball from going over the fence. So I got that, and then what else can I show off? Try to show off something kind of interesting. I'll just grab a stack here at the end. So we got this good old playoff absolute. And this is cool because it shows the bat that the relic came from.
Yes.
And so that's cool. I always like it when there's a photo of the relic that it came from. And here's another one. So these are some playoff relic cards. And again, the base that the relic came from, right there. And they did one with 3 pieces. Same thing, the base. And then, oh, these are kind of cool. I don't know if you've seen this, if Boggs is in this set, but it's the portraits.
No, he's not.
And then the relic is on the back, and then there's a tab right here. And you can pull the tab down, and then it's just like this relic that you can kind of pull down from that tab. But it's like, yeah.
Wow.
If you want, I can take it out. Here's a cool one. This is a dual relic. Same thing. You can pull the tab down. And
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. What the heck? We're talking cards. I'll show you how it works. Something different, maybe if no one's seen it before. But there we go. See, it kind of comes down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then you can pull it back up there. I don't know. It's just something to play with, I guess, with your cards, right? So they made a few cards like that. This one's kind of, well, it's numbered to 100. So they're not particularly easy to find, but that one's not hard. Then the dual right there, same thing. You can pull the tab down, so that's cool. And then here we go, some private stock cards from, is this, oh, this is Pacific private stock. So this is an interesting product. This is from 2001, and this is the product that got Pacific out of the baseball card game because the relics in this product, some of them were found to be not authentic game used relics. Like Pacific was just putting random relics in the packs. And so this particular product here, Pacific lost their licensing because of the fake relics that they were putting in their cards, and that's why they got out of the game when they did.
But weren't they the ones that again in the early 2000s had on the back, hey, this piece came from this jersey that they pictured of it, or is that
Fleer was really good at that, and Upper Deck was fantastic. Topps was pretty good. And then Pacific, they didn't really make a lot of relic cards. They didn't get into the relic card game until later on. And then as soon as they got in, they got caught, and that was it. They were gone. So, yeah, that's kind of what happened there.
Who was the one that infamously had a slice of bat that had a cork in it?
Well, I know Sosa got caught.
Was it Sosa?
Yeah, he got caught with a cork bat.
They did a slight sliver of bat or something on the card, and it turned out that, or was it shoot?
Oh, I remember hearing that story. I don't know who that was.
There's a card that exists that has a sliver like that, supposedly with a cork. I don't know if it was Sosa though.
Well, I know Sosa in the middle of a ball game was hitting, and his bat exploded, and it was corked. And
Yeah.
when they asked him about it, he said, "Oh man, that was a batting practice bat. I thought that they took those away during the game." I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
come on, man, who's going to
Yeah.
believe that? But Sosa's not the only guy that got caught with a corked bat in the
I
middle
know.
of a ball game.
Yep.
So,
Wrigley Regular said Carlos Delgado had the cork.
okay. Now that
All right, I wasn't quite sure who it was.
that's great that the audience can
Yeah.
answer questions like that.
Yep.
So I guess I got some other cards I'll show off, unless there's something you wanted to show off.
No, this is sort
Okay.
of your thing here
Okay.
with the bonds collector.
Okay, yeah. I was going to show off some Mantle cards because you were talking about Mickey Mantle earlier.
Sure.
And I don't have any vintage cards in front of me, but I got this. This is, this is a great set, the 2011 Topps update.
Yep.
That's Mickey Mantle, the Diamond Anniversary card. And like you were saying earlier, cards like this can really get a young collector or a new collector into players that they've never seen play before.
Yeah.
I love that uniform and that classic image kind of mixed in with the modern technology of the card itself.
Yeah.
And here's another great example here. I forget what the name of this parallel is, but that's a great image of the mix.
I think it's just like a gold foil or something. I forget exactly what it's. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great card, and of course it's card number 7.
Yep.
That for a few years, card number 7 was dedicated to Mickey Mantle. And look, guys, I can't afford the 52 Mantle. However, I could afford a shiny reprint of it. So not a bad idea to have some kind of representation of a 52 Mantle in your collection if you can track one down. And then like you were talking about earlier, this is a Gypsy Queen. And it's great to see Mickey Mantle used in the tobacco size. Yep. And of course, what's so cool about the cards is they do pay homage to the tobacco companies that used to make the card. And this is straight cut.
Yep.
So it's a tougher back. So that's kind of a cool Mickey Mantle card. What else can I show off? I could show you. I remember when my son pulled this card here. I think I had like $3 in my pocket, and my son's like, "Dad, let's get one more pack of cards, and can I open it?" And so I said, "Okay, let's get a pack of cards." And he pulled this printing plate.
From what set is that?
This is 2006 or 2007 Topps Turkey Red.
Okay.
One of one.
The Turkey Red. Yep.
Yeah, and man, I remember when that came out of the pack. I said, "Son, you just pulled a one of one," and I couldn't tell who was on the, like that image. It's not the best looking printing plate. I think it's the magenta, but I turned it around. I'm like, "Holy crap, dude! You pulled a one of one Mickey Mantle, man. That's cool." So a great story, and it was such a pleasure that my son pulled that card.
Yeah,
so that's kind of a fun card. And then there's a great story to this card. So I'm going to share it. I've shown this card off quite a few times, but this is an upper deck card of Babe Ruth, and you got that beautiful relic in there, pinstripe right down the middle of the relic. So the story about this card is I had a friend that worked at a storage locker. He was the guy, that he was a clerk at the desk at the storage locker facility. And one day I get this call, and he's like, "Hey, Nate." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up, Ed?" "Hey, Nate, some guy's in here. He's got a couple of cards," and he starts describing the card. And one's like a Don Mattingly jersey card. And he's like, "Yeah, he wants like $40 for the Don Mattingly jersey card." And then he's like, and then he's got this other card. It's got Babe Ruth with a relic in it, or he probably said like jersey piece or something. It's got a pinstripe down the middle. I said, "Ed, buy it now." And the guy wanted $50 for this card, right?
Wow.
So my buddy Ed bought this card. Some guy that would probably had it in his storage locker, paid $50 for it, And he was a Giants fan, and he enjoyed baseball cards, and he knew I had a bunch of Bonds doubles. And so I said, Ed, he's like, yeah, I'll buy it, and you can just pay me the $50 for it. And I'm like, perfect, man, that's awesome, thank you. I didn't even know what the card looked like. I was just going off his description, and when I saw it, I was like, holy crap. And he's like, dude, just give me a few Bonds cards, it's yours. So
Wow.
that's the story behind this card.
Yeah.
And so, man, one of my prize cards in my collection is that Babe Ruth card. What else can I show off? I could show off some Bond stuff here. Well, we all like Pacific, and a card that is eluding me right now. And ironically, somebody sold one on Facebook for like $3 earlier today, and I missed out. I wasn't there to get it, but this is the platinum blue version of the 97 Prism, the 97 Prism Platinum Blue. Beautiful card, and I need this silver version, and I just haven't been able to track one down for the price I'm willing to pay, but that's a cool card there.
Yeah, those
yeah, and then we all like the Crown die cut cards from Pacific. This is a blue platinum parallel on this one.
Yeah, I think Boggs is only in 1 year, and it wasn't that year. I think it was the year before or something, because it doesn't have all the Boggs didn't have any of the parallel versions of that Crown Royale.
Okay, and here's one I love. So with Pacific, anytime you get the ruby, and this is the ruby, that's a retail only exclusive parallel.
Okay.
So I think Pacific might have been the first company to do, maybe Fleer Ultra had a few retail exclusives back in the 90s, but Pacific, their red retail or ruby parallel, these are hard to find because they were retail exclusive. Some of them were like exclusive to 7-Eleven, and they had some interesting ones. I know this is another retail exclusive. You couldn't even get this parallel in the hobby box from this is Omega.
Oh,
Pacific Omega. These ones, you couldn't even get them in the hobby box. They were retail exclusives, and they're numbered to 99. Kind of wild there. But Pacific had some interesting card distribution, the way they distribute the card. And then here's one of my favorite products. Now, people that collected in the 90s, Stadium Club was the first card that had the borderless, like high quality photo, beautiful cards. 1991 Stadium Club. But what a lot of people don't realize about Stadium Club is they have some of the most innovative inserts from Topps. Absolutely fantastic cards. They have some beautiful, some of the most beautiful Topps inserts are Stadium Club. And I'm going to show you guys a few examples. So the Triumvirate run, and I don't know if you have these, if Wade Boggs is even available, but 98 was the first year.
Not in that sense.
Okay, so this is the 98, and basically, if you were to look at this card as an uncut panel, there would be 3 players, and this would be the card to the right, and then the card in the middle was almost like shaped kind of like a egg, and then you had the card to the left, and it was a triumvirate, and there was a luminous. This one has kind of like a chrome look to it. Then you had the Illuminator, which is like a clear acetate.
All right.
And look at the back on this thing. These cards are just beautiful. My favorite one is the Illuminator. So it's like a clear acetate. And then the luminescent, which would be like a refractor.
All right. Yeah, I see it.
So the luminous, the Illuminator, and luminescent. So there we go. So we got that one. That's 98. Now in 98, they didn't label them. You just have to know by the way that they look. And then in 99, they decided to label them. So 99, again, luminous. And again, this card would be part of a 3-card panel. And it would fit together like a puzzle piece. So if you get all 3 of the players as part of the trio, you would have like a puzzle, So the luminous, oh God, these are beautiful. The acetate ones. So you can kind of see behind, right? It's like an acetate. Beautiful card. Absolutely unbelievably gorgeous. So that was the illuminator. And then the luminescent, again, like the chrome refractor technology. And then in 2000, they did the same thing, and I'll make it quick this time around, the luminous, the illuminator, and the luminescent. So those are really beautiful cards from Stadium Club. A wonderful, wonderful series of cards that they did. And then another one they did, this card here is from the early 2000s. Has a print run of 500, but this card is so sought after by set collectors that it out as far as like pricing, it typically will sell for a card numbered to about 25 from the same era. Okay, and it's because look at how beautiful this card is. Absolutely wow. Stunning. And I wish the light in here would show how beautiful this card is, but this is called the Beam Team, and it's like laser, like this panel right here is laser cut.
All right.
And then off to the side, it's die cut, and it uses like a foil shine. It's not, there's no etching. If this card had etching, it would be that much more beautiful. And yeah. I'll explain what etching is in a minute for those that don't know. But this card is absolutely stunning. A card numbered to 500 that will sell typically for what a card numbered to 25 from the same era. I think it's 2001 Stadium Club. I mean, I've seen the bonds on this go for over $100.
Oh wow!
And they never pop up. I mean, if you're looking for your player, you might have to wait a few years before you can track one down. So, I mean, the print run means nothing when it comes to this set. And then, so you got me gabbing and talking and whatever, but I don't have my refractors in this box, so I might not be able to show what etching is. I don't have any refractors in here. All my refractors are in another somewhere else. So I guess I can't really show what etching is. Yeah. Oh, well, you know what? Yeah. Never mind. I got some other cards here that aren't bonds that I'll have refractors of. If you want me to show what etching is.
Sure.
So, and I didn't really know the term etching until I was watching Those Back Pages, Eric.
All right.
And when he said the word etching, I'm like, that's the word I've been looking for about 20 years. Because there's a difference between a card with and without etching that has the refractor technology. Let me pull out a good example. Okay, this card is a fantastic example. So when you're looking at I wish my lighting was better. When you're looking at the shine,
yep,
there's like that added layer, like the wave in here.
Right.
It's not flat, it's etched. That's the best way I could describe it. Actually, those Wade Boggs refractors I had, I guess I don't have very good lighting here.
Well, isn't it more like the outline of the player, yes, and like
yes, exactly
the folds of the
outline of the player. There we go.
Yeah,
like you could really see it in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I know that's probably why the 98s are so popular. It's because there's a lot of etching. Like here on Wade Boggs' wristband. Oh man, this camera, I don't have like my setup for being live on your show is not conducive for shine. Like I don't have the right angle to show off the shine. That's the frustrating part about collecting cards, right?
Yeah.
It's when you're trying to show them off. If you don't have the right lighting, you can't tell.
Yeah. Well, what now? I think Red Sox collector Dan McGraw, he had a contest. I'm not sure if you entered it, but his contest wanted to know, like, hey, if you had one card of or an item that in your PC, what would it be that you want and stuff. But that's not quite what I'm curious of. I'm curious, is there any Bonds card that may not be really expensive or super rare, but that you have a hard time finding? It's sort of like your white whale of I can't believe I can't find this card. And it's not like because it's serial numbered to 5 or whatever.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you have any cards that you can't find?
That's a great question. You're putting me on the spot. It's really funny that you're putting me on the spot because let's just say in my Barry Bonds collecting career, I have run across a ton of cards that you're describing. And because I've been collecting Bonds so long, and because player collecting is a marathon and not a race, I've tracked down most of those cards. I off the top of my head, there's nothing. I got a list here, and I'll see if there's something on this list that will pop out to me. But sometimes I'll get bored and I'll be like, well, what cards do I need that I not have? And I got this little list here. Okay, so here's a good example. And you're probably familiar with these cards. I don't know if Wade Boggs has them, but in 1998, Topps Gallery, in every single pack, they would have a kind of like a promotion card that would have auction points. And it was 25, 50, 75, or 100 auction points. This is from 1998 Topps Gallery. I could show you an example of one of the cards if you want to see it. But basically, it looks like the regular 98 Topps Gallery card, but on the back, it's like you fill out it's like a redemption card, and you send these points into Topps, and then it was like auction points. So with Bonds, there's one for 25 points and one for 100 points that I don't have in my collection. And the funny thing is, I've watched somebody open up a box on 1998 Topps Gallery, and there's a points card in every single pack. And the guy that I watched open the box pulled 2 Bonds auction points cards out of one box.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, I just can't find the 25 point or 100 point. And I think it's because probably back in 98 when people were breaking the product, they just threw the auction points out. I mean, they didn't think of it as a collectible. And now player collectors like me, we want those auction points. And I actually have one sitting at COMC right now that I requested shipment for. I think it was a 75 point when I tracked down on COMC. But the reason why I don't have it, it's not so much because I can't find it, is because people want like 15, 20 bucks for these damn cards. And I know how easy they were to pull out of packs. But even though they were that easy to pull out of packs, the price on them is just really high. And I don't know. I should probably just pick them up though and bite the bullet.
Yeah, I have 2 that come to mind for Boggs. And I think it was in 2000 and I always get confused with 2008 or 2009. I think it's 2008. Upper Deck came out with this ginormous set for the Yankee Stadium Club Legends, because I think it was the last year that the Yankee Stadium, and so they made a card for
I know exactly what set you're talking about.
And Boggs is I bet you he has 50, at least 50 cards. I'm down to 6, and they're like $3 cards. They're not expensive, and sometimes they'll be listed on eBay, and I go to, oh, is that the one I need? Is that the one? No, I'm missing. It almost got to the point where I doubted whether Boggs was actually on those cards, on those card numbers. But all the searches I've done, and it'll be in the middle of they used to do a series, so they would do maybe 6 or 8 in a row for a certain player and then another player and so on. And they'd be smack dab in the middle saying, I know it's a Boggs card, and there's 6 of them that I just cannot find. It's frustrating. Plus, I don't know if you have any star cards of Bonds. I don't know if Star Company made any Bonds
Oh
cards back.
yeah, he was on a bunch of those sets.
Okay. There's one set from either 1988 or 89. It's called the Star Nova set, and it's either 9 or 11 cards. I think it's 11 in the set. And there's a glossy version and a matte or a dull version. And I have the glossy version and I can't find the matte. And about six plus years ago, there was a matte version, the entire set on eBay. And I passed on it because one of the cards had a pretty big ding in the corner. And I was like, yeah, no, I'll find another one. I have yet to find, and every time, because some of those sets still were sealed, so they'll put them on eBay and saying, "Hey, complete set of 1988 Boggs Star Nova cards." So I've asked the sellers, "Hey, does it look like there's glossy, shine on it, or does it look dull?" And one or two times I go, "Oh, it looks dull." I'm like, "Okay," so I'll buy it and I get it back and I open up, yeah, they're the glossy. So I still am missing that matte set, and not too many people sell Star cards. A lot of them don't think they're non-licensed and all this stuff, and so not too many people list them on eBay or even collect them. And yeah, so those Yankee Legends and that Star, those are my white whales that, man, I just can't find.
Yeah, I mean, the Star cards are definitely something that player collectors go after. Like, I have all the Star Bonds cards that are part of a complete set, but I don't really have a desire to collect anybody else's Star cards.
Yeah,
because they're like really crude baseball cards. But
yeah,
as a player collector, they're awesome. You're like, oh yeah, I just knocked 9 cards off my checklist in one, $2 purchase, right? I mean, they're fantastic for that. But and they look good in binders, so.
Yep. But definitely,
that's a great story there.
For the player collectors, that's about it.
What else? Yep. Maybe I have another one. That's a fun topic to talk about. Of course, there's a few Topps tech cards, that are hard to track down.
Yeah.
And then, just like some of the print variations on some of the junk box cards, I'd say can be a pain in the ass. I don't know if you collect all those printing variations from like all between like 87 and 92, 93, but there's a bunch of different printing variations.
I have a lot of them. I'm not sure if I have every single variation out there, but I just found out though that there's a printing variation in the 89, I think it was 89 Donruss Boggs, that on the back, and I found out that I have both versions, but I didn't realize there were two versions. You know how, as you mentioned, back of cards, you can tell if they were league leader by either italics. Well, they had a little asterisk. Well, in the top right-hand corner, one version has an asterisk, then denotes, and below it says league leader. There's another version where it's asterisk denotes asterisk league leader.
Yeah.
Like now, one little asterisk, and someone spotted it or say, hey, there's two different versions. I mean, again.
Now, what's going to drive you nuts?
Yeah.
On both of those cards, there's two versions of each one.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So one version has incorporated, INC.
Okay.
And then the other version is incorporated with a dot at the end of the C.
Okay.
So there's 4 versions of the 88 Donruss. Sorry.
Okay. I'll have to check that
I've actually tracked down all the bonds. I wonder if it's in this binder. So yeah, it could go on and on forever.
I only have about maybe 12 or 15, so I had about an even number of the 2 asterisks versus 1. So now I'm gonna have to check to see if I have any of the ink period or.
Yeah. And then you probably know about the 90 Fleer printed in Canada version.
Yes.
And
Yep,
then
yep. I
there's
have both of those.
there's one that's printed in the USA where it's U.S.A. And then there's one where it's printed in the USA where USA is U.S.A. Not a dot at the end of the A. So
For
there's
what,
three
90
versions of,
Flair?
yeah. The Fleer did that a lot. I could open up a whole, if you want to go, I know probably about 50 junk wax variations it sounds like you might not be aware of. So
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
need
I'll
to
have to
go
talk
through.
with you about that over the phone because I don't want to
Yeah.
bore people watching this. But
Boy, and here I thought I had, I've been working on my master checklist now for, God, I bet you it's 15 years. And
yeah,
it's amazing what you still can find out there. You go, I never knew this existed, whether it be a print version or something else. You go, wow, okay. And now I have some in my checklist, some blank backs. Now that's just a printing error. That's not a
yeah. That
very
I don't even consider that a card. I just consider
right.
it a scrap heap
It's a
that found
novelty
its
or
way into
something. It's
the.
not,
Yeah.
yeah. But so I don't really. I have a couple, and for the ones I have, I put on my checklist. But I don't really follow blank backs because that's just, again, it's or miscut, like where you have half of someone else's card.
Those are
Now,
just fun, right? Those are fun to add
yeah.
to the collection. But
Now, there is one though. It was score. It was 80. I think it was 88 score, and I saw it on eBay, and someone snatched it up, and it was actually, I think it was one listing, and it was a fairly high price, and someone scooped it up. It was a Wade Boggs front with a Roger Clemens back, and then there was a Roger Clemens front with a Wade Boggs back. Now
oh,
that's interesting.
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
But that's the only one I've ever seen. I never knew that those. I mean, you get wrong backs,
Yeah.
but to have at least this person had the listing of both versions, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty
But I
cool.
missed
Yeah.
out on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that they're just like cards that were intended to be thrown out at the manufacturer, and employees grabbed them and thought they were cool and brought them home, and then 20 years later they end up in a player
Yeah.
collection.
Well, either that or, back then when they were producing 10 million of a single card, quality control wasn't that. I mean, they were just pumping out products. So that's why you get all these, oh, well, okay, we found a little error in, U.S.A period. We missed a period. All right, just change it and crank out another 500,000 of them. So
Yeah,
it's
well, I think they're different print runs, really, is what it is. It's just a
yeah.
completely different print run.
Right.
And but yeah, it makes fun. I mean, that's what's fun about player collecting is you can kind of revisit some of the older cards or some of the junk wax cards and find printing variations. And it's just fun. It's not expensive. It's fun,
Right.
but it
Yeah.
does open up a
The
can of
thrill of the
worms.
chase when this variation is out there. And like you said, it's not, well, the one of the hard things could be is, since it's not really worth much, and unless you're a player collector, you're not gonna stick something like that on eBay. You'll find it maybe at a card show in a 50-cent box, and you happen to look through. Well, when I was at the 2019 National, um, there was a table I went to that had just boxes organized by player. So they had some Wade Boggs cards, so I just started thumbing through. Now, it just happened to be that not too long before the National, I found out that it was a 91 upper deck, 92 upper deck, that they had a different version of the hologram on the back, that they used the hockey hologram or something like that. So I had known I had one of the versions and I was missing the hockey version or something like that. So I looked it up online and I knew what the hologram looked like and so on. So it sort of was in the back of my mind. So I'm flipping through thes cards, and it was literally 5 cents a card. Okay. So I'm just going through and I'm like, oh, 92 upper deck or whatever it was. And I flipped it over and I'm looking at it and I go, oh, it's the hockey hologram.
I
Right.
love I
Five-
love finding
5 cents.
stuff like that.
So I
Yeah.
go up to the guy. That's the only card I wanted. I go up to the guy and I say, here, I like this one. I was getting ready to reach in my pocket for $1. It's 5 cents. He goes, just take it. I'm like, thanks. and
You didn't want to deal with the nickel.
to everyone else, it's worth. I mean, but to me, hey, I have the variation. So,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the type of cards that are definitely a treasure to find in the dollar box or whatever, nickel box or whatever you want to, wherever
yeah,
you find it. I found cards like that too, of bonds in those, bottom feeding boxes. You can sometimes you never know what you're going to find.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah, you have to
I
show
just
that
don't have
card in a
time at
video.
the
And
national to go through all those boxes. I mean, just with everything there, and I know I'm planning on going to Chicago next year. Um, and I've already hopefully this whole COVID thing doesn't interrupt next year's national, but so I'm saving up for that, and I know that well, at least I hope that I'm going to be running into a lot of YouTubers like yourself and others, and be spending time doing that. So I unfortunately I'm not going to have a lot of time to go through some of these boxes. It's just going to be like, hey, do you have any box cards yet? No. Okay, move on to the next one and stuff, and not have time really to rummage through. But I love rummaging through those boxes, even if it's not bogs. I just love looking at cards.
well, you know what'll happen? What you'll notice when you go to the National in 2021 is your phone's going to start blowing up because people are going to say, "Hey, John, do you need this card? Do you need this card? I found this card at table such and such." And
Well, that'd be great. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many cards I have added into my bonds collection because people have reached out to me and asked me, "Is this something that you need?" As a matter of fact, oh man, that's how I found my Willie Mays rookie card. Is because I got a call from my buddy Max, and he knew I was on the hunt for that card, and
Mhm.
just so many great stories of people tracking stuff down and hitting me up, so I'm able to acquire it in my collection.
Yeah. The one disadvantage that I'm at the National is there's a bog super collector. And we had talked about the groups of bogs collectors, that there are some that have deeper pockets than I do, and that's fine with me. More power to them, and they've picked up some really amazing cards. Well, he works for one of the vendors there, so and he's not their employee, but he volunteers his time and stuff like that, and so they let him go. So he's in, like, as people are setting up and stuff, and he has a lot of connections and networks. So even if when I show up, like what is it, the Wednesday afternoon was the earliest us normal folk can
Yeah, yeah.
show up. He had already said, hey, look at the box cards I picked up. I'm like, dude, I just got here. So yeah, hey, so what, it's fine.
Damn, man.
if,
Yeah, I
if,
wonder
if
how
I had
many.
if I had those connections, sure. So I can't
Yeah,
fault
that's
you.
why I think I think when you tell me that story, it just blows my mind that I was able to pick up that tier one bat knob autograph bonds card in my collection, because the odds of me finding that card are it's an impossible card to track down, and
Mhm.
somehow I ran into it, and I was able to add it to my collection. But I think it would be probably a lot tougher for me to track down big cards like that now for my bonds collection, just because his desirability has skyrocketed in the last 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people are anticipating that he's going to get inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. What did he come in at? What was he? He was in the
He was just right at 60% last
okay.
year.
All right.
I
And you
mean,
need 75?
he's
Yeah.
what's that?
You need 75%?
Yeah, you got to have 75, and he's got 2 more years on the ballot. And I think 2022, the writers are going to have to put him in. I mean, you can't keep him
Yeah.
out.
I know. He hasn't been
There's
banned. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, if you haven't been banned, I think whether it's just, I don't know. I think
Well,
he
there's
should
too
be
many
in.
guys. I mean, look, there's guys in the Hall of Fame that use PEDs. There's guys that are going to get in the Hall of Fame that use PEDs. And then there's the greatest baseball player of his generation and arguably of all time, of course, he used PEDs, but the the baseball community has got to. You can't keep them out. You just can't. You can't. How are you going to do that? You can't. I mean, so many guys are already in the Hall of Fame that used them. So why are you going to single out the guy that just happened to be the best of his generation? You know, I mean, what are you going to do? So,
yeah.
but that's a topic for another show, another time. We talk about that for hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe I'll show off one more Bonds card here, huh?
Wrigley Regular disagrees with you, Nate. He says he's not getting voted in, maybe a committee down the line. So there's different opinions on, like, hey, what he did or supposedly did should invalidate him, and I don't know.
Here's the thing, though, is there's somebody that's going to be on the 2022 ballot by the name of David Ortiz. And I'm going to tell you something right now. The media loves David Ortiz. The baseball community loves David Ortiz. Everybody loves David Ortiz. People look at David Ortiz, and he's one of the most clutch postseason players, maybe the most clutch position or hitting postseason player of his generation. Okay.
Yep.
And he was on the Mitchell report. So even though he technically never tested positive, there is documentation that he used PEDs, and he even admitted that he used PEDs. And I'm telling you right now, there is not a scenario in my mind where David Ortiz is not getting into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. And so because that name is going to be on the ballot before the writers, have to decide whether, okay, is Bonds a Hall of Famer or not, there are going to be writers that are going to see that name, David Ortiz, and they're going to be like, I am going to vote for David Ortiz. They might not vote for him his first few years on the ballot, but there are people that are going to vote for David Ortiz. And I think that a light switch is going to go off in a lot of writers' heads that say, I got to vote for Bonds because there is no justification for me voting for David Ortiz and not voting for Barry Bonds. And that is how I know for a fact. I don't know for a fact, but that is one of that's my argument for why people that are stubborn about not voting for Bonds will have to change their strategy on how they vote, because they're going to want to put David Ortiz in. And there's no way that there's going to be a Hall of Fame with David Ortiz without Barry Bonds. It's just not going to happen.
Did you think I don't mean this to turn this into a big Hall of Fame debate, but do you think Bonds may, because I don't know, he never seemed, and again, this may be an impression that I have absolutely wrong, but he seemed to be one that wasn't a big fan with the press and some of the public and stuff like that, sort of like Ted Williams. Like he was known for, didn't care about the newspaper reporters and all this stuff. And some say that caused him not to win the MVP in
91. Yeah, no, that definitely cost him an MVP when the year Terry Pendleton won the MVP. Yeah. And no, Bonds absolutely was very, very surly with the media.
Yeah,
there's no debating that at
you think all. That versus Ortiz. So do you think that, hey, Ortiz is, hey, this bubbly guy, and he's on broadcasts now and doing all stuff that they would like David Ortiz?
Yeah, but here's the thing: if
or anything
so that's an argument that could be made, but it's a horrible argument, and I'll tell you why.
I agree. I agree. I'm not why they should.
So if there are writers out there that don't put a player in the Hall of Fame, and it doesn't have to be Bonds, it could be or vote for a player. It could be a number of players that would not get votes because of their relationship with the media. Then you shouldn't have been given the responsibility of deciding who gets in the Hall of Fame, because it's not, when you're casting a vote, you're not casting a vote on who you had a personal relationship with, who you like. You're casting a vote on who represents the era on the field the best.
It's
And
not
I
popularity
guess there might be people that say, well, they got to look at, like personality or character and this and that. And that's part of the requirement when you're making a decision. But you know what? I mean, there are reasons why Bonds was like that. I mean, he was in the clubhouse as a kid and he saw how the media treated his father. And that's kind of what stemmed this behavior from him of being kind of short and surly and not really wanting to give himself to the media, which is no excuse, but
right.
that's that there is a story behind his behavior that kind of makes sense, right? I mean, it's not, it wasn't just for nothing, but you shouldn't be given the responsibility of deciding who goes in the Hall of Fame if your vote is based on your personal relationship with the player that you then have to vote for.
Yeah, it's not a popularity contest. I mean, it should be the player's career on the field, and then some people say, well, you have to consider off the field too. But regardless of, I mean, you can't deny Bonds's stats. Now you can say, oh, well, it was enhanced because of this, but like you said, that may not be a good argument because there may be others that maybe got their numbers partially through.
Well, you got to remember too,
whatever, and so.
I mean, look, when Bonds was taking PEDs, the whole league was doing it. I mean, look, Canseco's never been proven wrong, and he said what 80%. I don't know what it is. Let's just say Canseco said 80% of the players were using PEDs. So if 80% of the players were using PEDs when Bonds was playing, that means 80% of the pitchers were using PEDs. So yep. I mean, so how can it's just like that's the era.
Yep.
Put the guy in the Hall of Fame now. Yeah. Let's move on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's so anyways. But I like that Cubs collector, his comment, there's a lot of people that feel the way that he does feel, but I don't think that that's going to hold up historically. I think that it's a sentiment. At the time when Bonds retired, it was it was the story in baseball, but yep. It's not, but historically, when people look back, they're not going to say, this guy was great because he used PEDs. They're going to say he was great and he used PEDs.
Yeah.
Because everybody used PEDs and not everybody was as great as Bonds. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. It's always an interesting discussion. It's usually around the end of the year because they announce it in the early part of the year. Oh, here's the next Hall of Fame class. And you start seeing Facebook posts, you start seeing YouTube, videos on okay, here's the next class, and here's who should be, and here's how my vote is. And I mean, it's a huge discussion, and people have lots of different opinions, strong opinions on who they think should or shouldn't come in, and then invariably it's, oh, this player got snubbed again, or I can't believe Harold Baines made the Hall of Fame. This is a tragedy and stuff. It's like, it's all every year. It's a huge discussion of just the Hall of Fame.
Well, here's the thing you got. Here's the thing. Here, okay. So I see the comment. Wrigley says he thinks he should be in, but won't be voted in by the writers. And
so,
that's a possibility. Definitely, that's a possibility, but I really think he's going to get written in 2022 by the writers for a variety of reasons. And the David Ortiz, I think, conundrum is going to ultimately get Bonds into the Hall of Fame. I really believe, and I've been talking about that since I mean, I've been talking about that for the last 5 years. Since
Yeah.
David Ortiz retired, I've been talking about
Mhm.
that. Because when he retired, his last season, he got to, have the grand tour of the
Yes.
American League, and he got the treatment and the "We love you" and the "Remember." Bonds didn't get that when he retired,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking to myself, you know what? David Ortiz is going to be a Hall of Famer, and he was on the Mitchell Report, and then thinking to myself, you know what? Bonds is going to get voted into the Hall of Fame because of that, and that's where that whole thought process started. It was
Oh, we'll
actually
see.
David Ortiz's last year as an active player is when I started thinking
Yeah.
that thought process together. But we'll
Yeah.
see. I mean, I hope I'm right. I think I'm right, but I wouldn't put my life. I wouldn't say if I wouldn't bet my life on that I'm right. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. And then as far as like the Hall of Fame, I mean, you know, it's you got a bunch of opinions, and some of the opinions put players in, some of them don't. But as a collector and as a baseball fan, I have my own Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
from what I see and what I think,
Yeah.
and it doesn't always correlate with the Hall of Fame. And another thing that people don't realize is the Baseball Hall of Fame has no affiliation with Major League Baseball. It's its own entity,
Yeah.
and it's a museum. The
Hmm.
Hall of Fame is a museum. It's not the authority on who is great and who wasn't. And
Right.
so when you're a fan of someone like Barry Bonds or Pete Rose or Dale Murphy or Don Mattingly or whoever you think should be in the Hall of Fame and they're not for whatever reason, just remember that the Hall of Fame is a museum full of opinions.
Yep.
And I know that Pete Rose doesn't qualify to be voted into the Hall of Fame. So it's kind of ironic because it's not sanctioned by Major League Baseball, but he can't
Right.
get voted in because he's banned from baseball. But there's a little contradiction there. But the bottom line is a Hall of Fame is not is not like it's not Major League Baseball doesn't run the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame Museum, the curators of the Hall of Fame are who run the Hall
Yeah.
of Fame.
And you hear a lot of talk of Hall of, instead of Hall of Fame, Hall of Very Good. And as a baseball card collector, um, yeah, I mean, you may say, hey, you know what? In my mind, Don Mattingly is a Hall of Famer. He was a great player, great in his era for those 5-6 years when he was an indigenous stuff. Man, there was no one better and all that stuff, and that's great. In your mind, if you think Don Mattingly is a Hall of Fame caliber player, he may not have a plaque, but that doesn't mean that you, as a Don Mattingly collector or fan, can't think of him as a Hall of Fame caliber player. So
Yeah, he's one that gets a lot of argument from baseball fans. Him, Dale Murphy,
mhm.
um, God, there's so many. Steve Garvey. I mean,
Yeah,
all these bubble guys, right? Like, why aren't they in? And then you get and then what the hell is Harold Baines doing? Why isn't Dick Allen in the Hall of Fame? Well,
yeah,
a lot of his problem is that, like we were talking about earlier, it's his relationship with the media,
Mm.
and so yeah, and then so you have all these players that are in, or Vida Blue is another great example. He's not in the Hall of Fame. A lot of that has to do with his off the field troubles with the law with marijuana back in the
Mm.
70s and his relationship with maybe some of the writers. So it definitely is it's the Hall of Fame is interesting, but I'll tell you what, there's definitely a difference between a Hall of Famer, let's say Babe Ruth,
Hmm.
and a Hall of Famer of someone like Alan Trammell, right? I mean, there's just a
Yeah.
difference. Like,
Yep.
they're both in the Hall of Fame, but um, Alan Trammell, how could you put him in the same category as Babe Ruth? I mean, there's just no comparison. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
Babe Ruth is
at some point,
is a completely different kind of ball player.
yeah, at
So
some point you have to draw. If you're looking at some of the best players in the history of baseball, yeah, you have to draw a line at some point, and I think some people get worried that with players being on for these 10 years and now these veteran committees and all these other committees, that over time the Hall of Fame will get diluted, that it will encompass the Hall of very good players and stuff. And then, but again, it's so, I mean, is that a bad thing? I don't know if that's a bad thing. That it may be a way to recognize good players. Maybe they're not all considered great, but each one has their own opinion on. I mean, someone may say, "Hey, you know what? You may think, you may not think Alan Trammell is up there with Babe Ruth, and if you look at his numbers, absolutely not. But boy, I watched him play. I was a season ticket holder, and man, did he do this and that and whatever beyond his stats. Ozzie Smith, he didn't hit for high average, but his defense and his this and what he brought to the game and blah, 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 and these intrinsic stuff. You can make a case for a lot of these players. Yeah, very few people are going to be on that caliber for pure stats of Babe Ruth, because he was one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah. But that just shows you the diversity within the Hall of Fame, right? Like, there's so many. I mean, there's just such vast discrepancies of Hall of Famers that are within just the Hall of Fame community, right? And I mean, like, if people that are watching this, if you've watched my videos, there's a player that I believe is an absolute Hall of Famer based on who's already in the Hall of Fame, and that is Omar Vizquel. I really think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But the funny thing about Vizquel is, like, when he was actively playing, nobody looked at him and said, well, there's a Hall of Famer. Now, that is an example of someone that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But then the guy plays 20-plus years. He accumulates over 2,800 hits. I think he's close to 2,900 hits, multiple gold gloves and part of, championship teams and all this stuff. And then you're like, holy crap. Now that I think about it, I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I think some people argue that you could be, just like I mentioned with Greg Jeffries. Hey, he played in the major league, 8 or 10 years. He wasn't that great, but he was a good enough player to be in the major leagues for 8 or 10 years. Well, some people may argue, well, just because someone, he got so many hits or this or whatever, because he was around for 18, 20 years, but were any of those 18 or 20 years exceptional, or was he just good enough to be around for 20 years? And some people use that argument as saying, but that doesn't make him Hall of Fame worthy. But then others like you would say that does make him a Hall of Famer, because, there are very few people that could have a 20-year major league career, and you must be doing something good enough to be playing for 20 years. And yes, over 20 years, your numbers and hits and RBIs and stuff, they're going to go up because of just your longevity.
Well, the argument for Vizquel isn't so much like statistical offensive accumulation of stats. It's more of like position, like relative to his position. He's a shortstop, right? So just that particular position, like if he put those kind of numbers up as a first baseman, people would laugh at you if you said he's a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? But as a shortstop, and it's his defense, just like Ozzie Smith, it's his defense, or Brooks Robinson, it's his defense. That's like there's a few exceptions, and I think Vizquel is part of that list of exceptions where it's not the offense, it's the defense, and then the serviceable offense with exceptional defense that can get certain guys put into the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
When you're talking about Vizquel, Hall of Fame, we did not have an agenda tonight.
No, we didn't, and hey, I think we talked the gamut of Boggs and Bonds and Hall of Fame and the hobby and vintage versus modern and all that stuff. But we're getting on maybe at just under 2 hours here, and on the East Coast here, it's approaching 1 a.m. I'm actually surprised that I guess not too surprised. We have five watchers on here. They're probably more out towards California area, unless there's some other night owls. But thinking maybe for now we can wrap this up. But man, it was fun. Really appreciate you coming on. And you still there, Nate? Oh, we may have actually lost Nate there. So, yep, looks like we did. So, with that time out there, I want to thank Nate for joining me on this latest hobby talk, and enjoy figuring out who the next guest. Oh, here he is. There we go.
I was just you're ready to wrap things up, and the internet connection said, "Get out of here."
Yeah. No, but that's great. Hey, Nate, thank you for joining me on this. This was fun. I know I'm going to be doing others, and at some point we'll love to have you back on as well. This is sort of new for me. You're my second quote unquote guest, although I don't really Binks, when's the next one? I don't know when the next one's going to be. I did say something to baseball collector Mike, saying, hey, maybe at some point I'd like to have him on, get his background and story. So maybe he'll be next, maybe in a couple weeks, something like that. We'll see, Bink, sorry. And yeah. He just caught the end. Well, this will be recorded, and when the stream's done, it'll probably be up sometime tomorrow, I guess. The recorded version, so you can check in. So, Bink, sorry, we got you here right at the end, but I'll make an announcement on my channel next time I have a hobby talk. So, Nate, again, have yourself a good evening, the start of your weekend here.
Yes, and until next time, thanks, guys, for tuning in to John and I. It was a lot of fun, and I could talk baseball and baseball cards for hours, as you see here.
I know it could. All right. Hey, Nate, I'll catch you later. And again, thanks again. All right. See you guys.